All right, welcome everybody, and thanks for attending today's Power Webinar, Preparing for Canada's ELD Mandate. My name is Patrick Urista, and I'll be moderating for today's presentation. We're going to go ahead and get started in just a second, but first I would like to say that we're very excited to have Mike Colbert with us as presenter today. Mike is the Director of FSS, or Field Service Solutions Sales at AssetWorks, and is a 27-plus year veteran of wireless mobile technology deployments and has a wide range of experience with ELD in North America. Before we get started, I just want to give everybody a quick heads up. The microphones have been muted, so if you have any questions at any time during the presentation, you can use the WebEx chat tool. You should all see the chat icon located on your screen, and this acts as an instant messaging tool, so feel free to use the WebEx chat tool to enter any questions during the presentation. Make sure you send them to the host, and I'll be more than happy to field and relay them to Mike at the conclusion of the presentation for a brief Q&A session. So with all that being said, I think we are ready to go ahead and get started. So Mike, whenever you're ready.
Great, thanks Patrick, and appreciate everyone's time today. So like I say, we'll just a short session today, so we'll get right to it. So the key things we want to cover today, of course, is the Canadian ELD mandate status, where are things at, and with that, we're going to cover a bit of the U.S. ELD mandate and some of the lessons we learned as we went through that process in the U.S. market a number of years ago. And with that, what are some of the expected roles and resources within your organizations that you're going to need to help prepare for the mandate that's coming here fast and furious? And part of that's going to be the pre and post deployment planning. What sort of things do I need to understand as an organization I need to be planning for in this deployment side of things? And then, a big part of it, of course, maybe some tips to help drivers transition to ELD. Of course, many of them are on paper today, and now they're going to move to electronics. How can you help that process along? And then finally, we're going to talk about leveraging your ELD investment. You have this technology you're doing specifically for ELD, but what more can I do with it? How do I leverage that investment to maybe bring more value, more functionality to my organization? So first of all, just real quick, I want to touch base a little bit on AssetWorks. Who is AssetWorks? 30-plus years we've been in fleet technology deployments. We've had mobile computing systems we deployed since the early 1990s, and that was pre-cellular days. That's over two-way radio systems back in those days, and pioneered some of the first commercially available GPS systems as well in the 1990s. And currently today, with the suite of AssetWorks products, including ELD, GPS telematics, fleet maintenance, fuel management, we have over 4 million vehicles under management today under our broad range of products. And we are a global enterprise. I'm coming to you from the Calgary office, where this product is based out of and supported primarily. But we do also have multiple offices in the United States and also some overseas as well. And a few, just a couple logos real quick: the Trican, ConocoPhillips, Ferris, Torque, some of the more local customers we have. So familiar, obviously, with the Western Canadian marketplace, being from here. So where's the Canadian ELD mandate status at today? Well, we all know the deadline's June 12th, and that's coming fast. Coming fast at us. And one of the talk I get a lot of is there going to be any extensions. So clearly there's no word of an extension today. And I know the Private Motor Truck Council has been pushing for a 6-month deferral. And some of the rationale behind these, why deferral? Hey, we've known about this deadline for June 12th for a couple of years now. The issue is third-party certification. A big difference between the Canadian ELD mandate and the U.S. mandate is that in Canada, there's going to be a formal third-party certification. So a couple key dates here. It wasn't until October 26th, 2020, that the first certifying body was actually accredited. So us as a vendor, that was the first time we could actually bring our product to an accrediting body. Simultaneously, Transport Canada announced there'd be some change into the testing procedures, so there had to be programming changes that had to be done, so nobody could actually bring their product to get certified at that date because there was changes to the testing procedure resulting in changes to the programming. And another item, there is a second certifying body pending accreditation, but that's still timing is still today. So the third party says still an unknown process and timelines are still TBD. It is in process now. Things are underway, but I can understand any of your organizations saying, hey, I want to wait till I see a certified device. There's a lot of moving parts right now to get that finalized. So from a device certification today, there's not a single certified device of today's date. And of course, like AssetWorks and other vendors, we're fully in process and is fully expected to be completed well before deadline. But given this, I know that's why there's some organizations pushing for a deferral, but there's no guarantees, so we do have to plan that June 12th is going to happen. Some of the lessons we did learn from the U.S. Mandate were, avoiding the deadline scramble. The U.S. had a Trump factor, and I don't mean the fiasco, recently here this January, but back then Trump was expected to win the election, and people were just expecting he would overturn the ELD mandate. So there was a bit of a scramble, and a lot of organizations got caught short, saying, "Oh, I thought it was going to be canceled, and now I have literally weeks to get it done versus months." You need an internal champion. You need to make sure you've had those resources applied in that internal champion in your organization that's taking the lead and owns this task and making sure it comes to fruition. It's not just a sidebar job you can fill in the gaps on the side. Another key thing is understanding hours of service rules. What we've really learned, because with an ELD, there's no gray areas. And I've had multiple meetings with some of our U.S. clients where you'd ask them simple questions about, rule sets and whatnot, and you'd end up with 4 people arguing about how they did it within the organization. So it's really important that the organization understands the hours of service rules as it applies to them. And then learning the ELD mandate details really helps in your training and acceptance and understanding how things are supposed to work. So that does, of course, facilitate your deployment of an ELD. So what are the roles or resources within your organization that you need to worry about? Well, first you need that product champion we talked about, right? That needs to be a key internal person, maybe multiple, depending on the size of your organization. You need to make sure you give them time to be your project champion. This is going to take some time to get up and running. Of course, after 6 months or so, it's going to take less time, but you really need that time now. You need to be knowledgeable on hours of service and the ELD mandate, and they have to be able to enforce decisions, and they got to be able to be the project manager, and got to be able to make decisions and move things forward quickly within your company. The other roles you're going to need is identify your super users and trainers. So that's going to be, you're going to have the administration side. So they're going to oversee all the general duties with the system administration from the office side, not only be a super user themselves, but be able to train other users and manage all the office tasks related to ELD systems. Then you're going to need to identify driver trainers. So who's going to help us do the initial training, but also be able to onboard new drivers as there's turnover or expansion of your fleet, right? And you're also going to need to have personnel that are going to be able to do your driver support staff. Often that's same as your administration super users, but that's to handle the day-to-day support of your drivers. Oh, I forgot my login, or what do I do here? Just being able to have someone there for your drivers to be able to lean on if they need any help. All right. And again, make sure these staff have enough time in the day, and you've given their workload reduction so they can handle this item as it is going to be a key need for your organization. Another detail is installation planning. So do I install it myself, or do I bring in a third party to install any necessary hardware? So some of the advantages of installing this yourself is it gives you a lot of flexibility on the scheduling for installs. It's your fleet. If your staff, typically mechanics, are doing the installations, when you're bringing the fleet in for preventative maintenance or any maintenance things, you can install the ELDs. And, especially after the initial install, if you're expanding your fleet or you have vehicles turning over and need to move from one vehicle to another, you have the in-house expertise. And you also have the in-house expertise for any knowledge for, maintenance or troubleshooting. It is, you're going to have cables and items installed in the vehicle. Knowing how it's been installed lets you, that helps you be more self-sufficient. And cost can be an advantage. If I'm already paying for the mechanic and I have the available time, then it's not any additional cost to your organization. And one of the cons of it, though, is maybe you don't have the internal resources availability, so you can't do it yourself, or the internal expertise. And if you're trying to do a large volume of your vehicles all at once, it's going to be the speed of installs. You may just not have enough resources to mass install fairly quickly. So if you do go to a third party, again, the advantage is the speed of deployment and experienced personnel. That third party, we have multiple nationwide installers. They do this type of equipment all the time. They can install them quickly. Their personal experience, but the downside is they typically want to get in and get out. So can you make if your vehicle's on the road making you money, which hopefully that's what's happening, you may not be able to take them off the road and have a lot of vehicles off the road in a short period of time. So you lose that scheduling flexibility. There's of course a cost because I'm bringing in a third party, and when you expand your fleet, or if you have troubleshooting anything down the road, you don't have that in-house expertise that you would if you completed your own install. So again, the installation resources, typically your mechanics. If you're doing it yourself, you're going to want to have your own, a lead installer that can be the key person. You want them to be able to also train other. Pass that training on to any new mechanics and new personnel that come to the organization, and basically manage, coordinate the ELD installation with everything else that's going on with the fleet vehicles. And if you're using a third-party installer, you're going to need to have a project manager that's help coordinate, equipment from the vendor, availability of the vehicles, and availability of the installer. So it's more of a project management role at that point. So, once you have kind of your people and your team in place that you've allocated, you need to evaluate a vendor. So critical here is, look at things, years in business, your organization size and stability, and, experience in mobile computing, wireless, ELD. One of the things that we saw in the U.S. ELD mandate was, all of a sudden there literally were hundreds of companies that popped out of the woodwork providing ELDs, had never been in the fleet management technology before. So with Canada and the certification process, you do really need a commitment to the Canadian ELD market. There's much more cost to the certification process and time and effort. So there's going to definitely be fewer vendors available in Canada, but you're going to at least know they're committed to that marketplace. What type of deployment experience? So you need project management. What type of training plans are you going to get with this? What's the go live support and what's the post deployment support? So these are all the key criteria you need to look at. I mean, of course, cost is an kind of obvious one, but these are the types of things you need to look at in a vendor. And then when you get into the actual specific product, there's a couple ways to go. You need to meet certification and compliance, of course. You want it to be user-friendly, both on the administrator side and especially for the drivers. And it's good to have a drivable port. If you have a dedicated ELD device in vehicles, you want to make sure your solution has a driver portal where a driver can manage, see their logs, do non-driving status updates, from their own phone or from their own laptop, whatever it may be, outside of when they're not in a vehicle. And then you have to make a decision, what kind of ELD hardware platform do I want? You're probably familiar, there can be driver, bring your own device. Hey, everyone, we're going to use our smartphones and that's it. Or am I going to get more of a dedicated, consistent ELD device across the fleet where I'm going to have a specific device installed in my trucks? So if you look at the pros and cons of that, so the kind of the benefits of BYO, bring your own device, is, initial cost. Hey, we have them already. Let's, why don't we use them, right? And of course, that's convenient because you have at least that piece of the ELD component already in hand. But some of the, and it lets the driver's preference. Hey, if I'm an iPhone guy or an Android person, I can have my pick, right? Some of the cons of it are, any of us that have recently damaged our cell phone and we're still in the plan realize that a new smartphone are running you well over $1,000 these days. So the replacement cost can be pretty high on these devices. You can also be support challenges over multiple platforms. So if you do have the wide mix of devices and years of makes and models, it can provide support challenges to your team because you don't have any control over operating system updates or the other apps that are being run on the phone. So those are some of the challenges you need to make sure you overcome. There also is a little more driver interaction. You have to make sure, of course, the mobile app is on. You have to make sure the Bluetooth pairing occurs because that's how they would connect to the ECM of the vehicle. And And another element is you have to manage power. You're not connected directly to the vehicle, so you have to rely that the unit has to be powered up. The driver has to remember this power cord, and you know, like I said, needs the app open, and it has, you know, the phones, they have an off switch, so it's got to be turned on. So, but one of the key challenges that, you know, we've seen is driver distraction. If you're adding yet another functionality capability on a device like a smartphone to the driver, that opens up the whole element of driver distraction, and that could bring to further liability for organization. You need to consider that. You know, is the convenience of a smartphone version, you know, does that convenience allow us to live with the driver distraction issues that potentially come from that? On the other side, you can have more of a dedicated, you know, rugged, purpose-built device for your ELD requirements, right? So, first of all, typically it's more durable hardware. So, of course, being in Canada, it's typically more, you know, at cold temperature operation. You know, hopefully we have warm temperature operation issues sometimes. And looking forward to that this summer. And so, you know, shock and vibration, it's built for the trucking in rougher environments, especially if you're on roads or not always on highway travel. And the other benefit of these, they're hardwired to the ECM. So the directors, you know, worried about Bluetooth pairing and pairing issues. It's hardwired to the ECM. It's always connected. So same thing, it's connected. You always have power. You always, you know, ignition on. So when the truck's on, the unit's on. You're not, you know, relying on driver intervention. And it's a consistent platform across the fleet. Every device runs the same. Every device has the same versions. So it gives you a lot more consistency in the support perspective. And from a driver distraction control, because you're connected to the vehicle, because it's a more controlled device, you can limit or eliminate entirely what functionality the drivers can use while in motion. So you are not going to have issues where the ELD is giving the driver that distraction, because you can control that interaction with the device while in motion. And then some of the cons, I used to have cost as a bit of a con in here, but these prices, given the prices of smartphones today, I took that off. But there's typically more of an installation effort in this. You need a little more durable mount versus than maybe a clip-on into the air vent that you would with the smartphone, and the cabling, of course. So those are the two types of devices you need to evaluate. And then training and go-live planning. Absolutely identify your initial group of vehicle and drivers, typically depending on the size of your fleet. Is it 2 or 5 units? Make sure you have drivers that you know are open to this and are supportive of the VLD. It's not always, you know, they're not always welcome, as we know. And hopefully, you know, that they will help other drivers get on board. And then run paper and electronic logs simultaneously until you get that comfort level with the one, and then you transition fully over to electronic. And then you need to build the stage, you know, you need to, while you're doing this, build a stage rollout plan. So that's going to rely on your installation capacity, you know, your fleet size. It's also going to be your go-live support capacity. You don't want to light up 50 drivers at the start of one day, because they're all going to be calling in saying, hey, you know, I forgot my password or whatever. So you got to know you can, you know, slowly, you know, roll them out in a stage controlled manner. And then the final thing is, you know, there is more functionality beyond ELD, but you may also want to stage that functionality rollout. So if you are looking at things beyond ELD, even the DVR component, which can be electronic, or if you get into electronic bill of ladings, you might consider staging that functionality out. Get the core ELD stuff done first, and then turn these other functionalities, features on. And then post-deployment support, again, dedicated system administrator for your day-to-day operations. They're going to be the, you know, driver support contacts to, you know, triage any initial support and make sure someone's available there to help out your drivers, you know, answer any, you know, remaining questions and provide guidance on compliance as well. And, you know, timelines, typically when you initially put in a project, you have a higher volume of support, and that starts slowing down. So you can expect, you know, as you get, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 months into the transition to ELD, all those volumes, drivers get trained, they get comfortable, and the day-to-day noise really gets reduced once you get to that 5-month mark. And yeah, for LP driver communication, be very transparent. Make sure they really understand how ELDs work. And a critical thing here is ELDs track every every inch of driving time. And if there's not someone logged in on that driving time, it's going to create an error and raise a flag. So know that even your yard workers, anyone that is driving that truck has to have a log in. That's a key thing. That's probably the number one issue that we see. They'll make sure they know what to do with this issue, and that if they make a mistake, that's not a big deal. Mistakes, logs can be corrected. It's not the end of the world. There's the ability to correct things and fix, and provide an internal FAQ to them so that they know the contact info. Who do they need to go to? What's their escalation procedures? What are some of the common challenges and things they may run into, and how to overcome these? And even simple things like incentives, your Friday safety meeting, provide recognition, right? Hey, here's a Tim's card to the top 5 guys that are people that are adopting the technology. That's just some simple things. And the other side of it is focusing on the positives. Drivers have no more manual logbook entries. While there may be some kickback initially, we really find drivers completely embrace the electronic logs because they don't have to do a manual logbook entries. So they're complicated. They make mistakes. It's not always the easiest thing to do. So they get rid of that, right? And that reduces logbook violations. So that's directly impacting your pocketbook, right? So a study in the FMCSA did was they show that pre-ELD, to post-ELD, it was pretty much a 50% reduction of violations, hours of service violations when they had inspections. So, that certainly helps. Improve safety and accountability for them. It's there for their safeability. It also streamlines roadside checks. Companies that have ELDs already have probably found this when the inspector realized they have an ELD. It generally streamlines roadside checks, right? There's no arguments. There's not going through the books. It's black and white. It also helps the driver provide means to justify appropriate workload. Hey, they can clearly justify if there's supply chain pressure for them to break the law. They have the facts in front of them. They have the information in front of them to justify an appropriate workload. So one kind of final item as well is, what else? I'm invested into the ELD. What's beyond ELD? What should I do now, right? Because if you just use an ELD, you're not getting the full benefit of the investment in the technology. So you should expect your solution can provide you like full GPS tracking and driver behavior, so be able to get all the mapping, all those capabilities. Capture maintenance data, capture mileage and engine hours, so they can bring that back to your maintenance staff to know, hey, do I need to do some preventative maintenance? Get trouble codes in real time. Hey, is anyone driving their truck with the engine light on when they shouldn't be? Different forms of trailer tracking, which could be simple from just location once a day through to, hey, did my coolant unit fail? Did I overfill a fluid hauling unit? So, and probably one of the more value propositions to your organization would be the electronic dispatching and electronic bill of lading. And that can not only bill of lading, but you can also do things like if you do a JSA, job site safety assessments. So any paperwork that you're managing within your organization today, you could look to going electronic with that and getting a lot of the benefits on your ELD platform by adding some of these additional modules. And of course, DVR is part of that, capturing mileage and that. So look beyond ELD when you look to vendors. Hey, what else can I do? Maybe today I just care about ELD, but where do I want to grow this? Where do I want to grow the solution? So some of the key takeaways today here, as we'll leave a little time for questions. Deadline is coming, so give yourself time. I got some links here coming where you can look at who's certified, who's not, et cetera. Appoint the roles, allocate those dedicated resources. Again, make sure they're dedicated. Make sure you fully understand the hours of service rules. The ELD mandate has not changed the hours of service rules. They're the same as they were before. Make sure you're applying them to your organization correctly. Mm-hmm. And where you can, involve your drivers in the process. Need to get them on board, using the product and the products that you select, and make sure they're involved. Okay, and leverage your vendor's experience. Vendors should have gone, would have done this, have gone through these types of things before. Work through with your project manager, your vendor, and leverage that to improve the deployment within your organization. That said, I do have a resource slide, so we'll be sending this out as well to the group. But just, a few key things. If the ELD technical standards is a little bit of a dry read, but that gives you a lot of details. And then the follow to the bottom is list of certified devices. So we'll send this out as some good resources for you as well. And with that, we can see if there's any questions submitted, and look forward to hearing from you.
All right, sounds good. Great job, Mike. That was a really great presentation, a lot of great information. All right, everyone, we are now going to open up the floor for some of your questions. Just a reminder, if you have any questions at this time, please send them to the host using the WebEx chat tool on your screen. Provided that we have enough time, I'll pass your question to Mike, and he'll be happy to give you an answer. So we do have some questions right out the gate, Mike. So let's kind of jump right into it. So the first question, what is the average time to set up and deploy an ELD system?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, some of that does, of course, depend on your fleet size and availability of vehicles. But if you can kind of an average medium, small to medium fleet, you may take you 4 to 8 weeks to get equipment in, get the installation going, get trained, get up and running, and then you still got to expand and counting on, hey, I'm going to need another 30 or 60, maybe even 90 days, depending on fleet size, beyond that, to make sure, everyone's fully comfortable with it, fully transitioned, all the noise has gone down, and you just smooth sailing with everyone fully trained.
All right, awesome. There is a question here. Is it legal to have a paper, is it legal to have a paper log as well as an ELD right now?
Well, you have to mandate which one you're using. So if you had an ELD in a test mode and are running ELD, as a test, you can still maintain a paper log. So you do need to formally say which one you're actually using as your formal system of record.
Okay.
And
cool.
Then the inspector.
All right. Yeah. Good to know that. We do have a couple more questions coming in here. Let me take a look here. There's this one here. Is there a server to store information from each device, or is the information stored on each device separately?
The information is stored on the server. So while you're using the device, of course, it's on there, but it's continually syncing up with the server, updating the server, so that your office side is going to be seeing what you have in the vehicle pretty much simultaneously. Now, if you do go to coverage, it does run out of coverage. It maintains the information, and then when you get back into coverage, it'll sync up automatically. But fundamentally, the server becomes the system of record.
Okay, cool. So yeah, it's not on each single device. It eventually goes to the server for all the storage. Okay. Then there's one other question here. Using the dedicated ELD, how does overnight storage in negative 40 degrees Celsius conditions impact the device?
Yeah, so if you use a rugged unit that is going to go minus 40. So the rugged device, the one that I had in the image here, it operates to minus 20. So if it's going to go to minus 40, it does need to warm up to minus 20 before it'll operate. And you may, because it has a battery in it, it is on a docking station, you may consider bringing that device in. That'll improve longevity of the battery. So you can pull it off the docking station, bring it inside, so that, if your cab's going to be minus 40 for a period of time, you may want to remove that durable device out. But it does operate down to minus 20.
Okay, so yeah, you do have that option then to kind of, like you said, have that little bit more mobility with it, remove it from the docking station, bring it to a little bit warmer conditions. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Another question we got going on here, and there seems to be a couple questions like this, so I'm going to kind of wrap it up in a one type question. So there's some questions about reception in different areas. It looks like it mostly in Western Canada too. So what about poor reception areas? How will the device work? What have you seen, Mike, in your experience with these ELD devices working in areas where the reception might not be the best?
Yeah. So, I mean, the device does does operate in an offline manner. So if I am, let's say I'm logged in and I'm in an area that's poor coverage, it does queue up the messages. Now, one thing about the data messages, they're typically smaller packets. So when it's typically trying to this, even if you're in little areas of poor coverage, it has a better chance of getting in than, let's say, when you have a voice call where you can drop. The data's trying, it's got smaller packets, so it does eventually get in. So it does run, but fundamentally at some point in time, you do need to make sure you do get back in coverage so the server gets updated. So it does run. I mean, you can look to satellite as options. Obviously, there's costs to the satellite, or if you have Wi-Fi, we've had clients that actually use some of the Wi-Fi. If you have a Wi-Fi infrastructure for any reason, you could leverage. They've been able to do that as well, as a combination of Wi-Fi and cellular. So yeah, it does work, but the expectation is that it has to sync up at some point in time and have some access to coverage.
Okay, yeah, definitely. That's definitely some great information there, because like I said, there was a couple questions like that. But Mike, great job. That is actually all the time we're going to have for today. Thank you for all attending and taking your time for today's presentation. We will be sending out these resources, the slide deck with some of the links that Mike had provided to you later in the week. So keep an eye out for that. Mike, I'd like to also thank you on behalf of AssetWorks once again for just sharing your expertise, your product highlights with everyone today. As you can see, Mike's information is available here if you have any questions or any follow-ups. Mike and I will be sticking around for just another few minutes in case anyone has some last-minute questions. Otherwise, have a great day, and we look forward to having you for next time.